Story 1. I had a dog from the day he was born until the day he died. He lived to be 21 years, 38 days old. I cry all the time, often for no reason. Sometimes I just remember him. Sometimes a song just hits you differently. It's okay to cry. Story 2. Once, a month ago, I caught my fiancée with drugs and broke up with her. Then, a couple of days ago, I found out she was cheating on me for months with the band geek and drug user at the grocery store where she started working. We were together for 8 years, engaged for 6. We decided we wanted to put my money. She didn't have a job until June 2024. Toward the property I bought and build a house first, then marry. We finished late this fall 2024 and moved in just before Christmas and spent the new year in it. We weren't in this house but 2 weeks, and she was gone. Out of my life. I gave so much to her. She picked every color on the walls, the color of the floor, the couches, and even the bed she used to cheat on me with. I am utterly broken, stuck in a casket of what used to be my life. Story 3. I'm typically a no-emotion type of person. Nothing really phases me. But a few months ago my dad said I wasn't good enough and he's tired of hearing my nonsense about something I'm really passionate about. When I walked away, I couldn't hold back a few tears. Story 4. About a month ago, my friend at work decided to take sick leave due to mental health reasons. I didn't know he was struggling so badly and felt really awful about it and was heartbroken for him. Story 5. A year and a half ago, our black cat named Sneaky, whom we had for 16 years, got really sick, and we realized we would have to put her down. I was home alone and cried for the first time in my life. I'm a 57-year-old man, and that tore me up. I'm tearing up now as well. Story 6. I had an extremely exhausting week during which my partner was mad at me for something and not speaking to me. Instead of just resting, I tried to go out of my way to make amends, but in my exhaustion, fell short of a satisfactory apology and had a meltdown when she wasn't accepting it. Crying is healthy for us guys, though. If you're naturally a sensitive person, then refusing to cry for nothing more than to appease societal norms is aging you. I feel sorry for anyone who believes that it is somehow less manly to cry. I've spent the last few years learning how to let myself cry after spending since childhood trying to be a man. I had a horrible breakup and couldn't hold back any longer. I cried every day for what felt like a year before tapering off. I experience blockages nowadays in the sense that I'll want to cry but can't. This is usually fixed by putting on an emotional scene from a film. I'm proud to admit that the ending of Furious 7 is my usual go-to for this. Story 7. Death of a loved one and off and on for a while afterwards. Sometimes when I turned to ask them a question and realized not only were they not there, but they never would be again. Story 8. I've been crying off and on for the last week. I lost my 15-year relationship, and my cat died within the same week. It's been hell, and the emotions pop up out of nowhere. Now, I'm alone with our surviving cat, and throughout the day, out of the corner of my eye, I'll see something and think it's either my dead cat coming to check on me, or my girl coming to say hi, and then I lose it. Story 9. Yesterday, one of my cats is sick. I'm doing what I can for him, but yesterday was the first time I really let myself think about having to live without him. Let's hope he pulls through. Story 10. A couple of weeks ago, my cat was showing signs of urine crystals, so we rushed him to the emergency veterinarian. It was after hours on a Friday to get the medication. Turns out he didn't have crystals and instead has feline idiopathic cystitis. Basically, his bladder is like a snow globe with protein bits in it and is incredibly painful. I went from thinking we had over 15 years with the little guy to counting his time in days, and it broke me. It turns out feline idiopathic cystitis can be managed with diet, and he may never have another episode, but I didn't know that at the time. The little dude and his brain cell are asleep in his cat tower right now, where he'll probably spend most evenings for the next 15+ years. Story 11. A few days ago, and for most of last year, as multiple friends killed themselves, my grandmother died, and I had some realizations about my family that required me to separate myself from them. In total, last year I lost about 7 contacts. Story 12. Last year, I had to have one of my 2 cats put to sleep. I'm happy to report he went out doing what he loved, getting attention and eating. Story 13. About 2 years ago, I found my 14-year-old cat dead in his litter box. It was particularly painful because he was the last of the 4 pets my wife and I had before we had children, so they were basically our kids at the time. They all died within 2 years of each other, which was rough as well. Trying to explain this to our kids was difficult. He was my buddy and the sweetest cat ever. Story 14. My great-grandmother passed away on the 4th of February. She was 97 years old, but I still miss her. She was such a bright light in my life, and now she finally gets to be with her husband again. I miss you, Ma. Story 15. Just over a week ago, my 1.5-year-old daughter was very sick and was having a hard time sleeping. One night, a few days in, she woke up and couldn't fall back to sleep, so I picked her up to calm her down. She just collapsed onto my shoulder and sobbed. I did too. I hadn't experienced anything like this before becoming a parent, but the utter helplessness that came over me was so overwhelming. All I had left was essentially a hug. Story 16. My mom's memorial service was in November. I held it together at the funeral home and was even able to say a few words. The very short ceremony for just close family at the cemetery, though, absolutely gutted me. Story 17. Girlfriend's dog died a couple of weeks ago. Her dog was surprisingly very fond of me, which is unusual because her dog never liked anyone right away. So I grew to like her and care for her. She ended up passing away, and I did shed some tears. She was a good dog. It's okay to cry. Story 18. In December, I refinanced the house. I had been struggling with the mortgage as well as everything else. There was no extra for unexpected expenses and no room to save. This is a huge change, and I now have some breathing room. My wife also just got a new job since my kids are in school now. It pays enough that we're going to be able to properly save and put money aside for a trip this summer. I cried when I realized that I can breathe easier. It has taken such a huge toll that I didn't realize until it passed. Story 19. This morning, my life is crumbling. I have been living with rheumatoid arthritis for 3 years, and my attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and mood disorder are out of control. I am finding it hard to function on so much medication. I am recovering from a nervous breakdown last year that left me admitted to a psychiatric ward. I have not been able to work for 7 months. I have to apply for social housing and disability income support. I feel my plans for the future are over. But I, a 37-year-old male, cried because today I crave intimacy, touch, attraction, and love, leaving me feeling so alone. I feel pathetic and useless. I fear the pain and unpredictability of rheumatoid arthritis. I feel no woman would have me. Story 20. Sometimes, I'll attempt to make myself cry, trying to reduce my anxiety. Crying isn't something I feel comfortable doing in front of others, due to societal expectations of masculinity, but it's a genuine stress reliever. Sometimes, I'll relive events from my past that were genuinely sad with the hope of getting a good cry out of my system. It's important to have alone time so you don't have to explain your feelings to anyone. Story 21. Grandma passed away last year. She was my last grandparent alive. She taught me how to ride a bike as a kid. She loved talking to everyone in her vicinity. She lit up every room she was in with pure joy and happiness. She always playfully forgot the names of her kids and grandkids. Hi, Jerry. I mean, Danny. I meant Mike. I miss her. Story 22. I am 35 years old. I cry a dozen times a year. I probably cried 10 times since my cat died about a year ago. He was my first pet and spent years with just us. I also cry randomly during particularly emotional scenes in movies or books. I think I cried during Schmidt's wedding in New Girl. It's funny because I check a lot of the typical man boxes. I am a diehard sports fan, love my whiskey, and I am married. I don't know, just emotional I guess, and my wife supports it. Story 23. About 3 weeks ago, I broke up with my girlfriend. We had been together for a little over 8 years. This is a person I had plans of moving in with and eventually marrying, so with all of that gone, I feel aimless, to be honest. Sometimes I feel like I don't even know who I am anymore. That's been the hardest part to cope with, if you ask me. Story 24. Listening to The Wizard and I from the Wicked movie soundtrack a couple of weeks ago. The whole song is Elphaba fantasizing about literally just being liked, as well as what she can change about herself to fit in better. I've been picked on and bullied my whole life, and it hit me harder than I expected it would. Story 25. I recently attended a funeral for a friend of over 20 years. He was the happiest, most headstrong individual I had ever known. Without him, I would never have gained the confidence and self-worth that I have today. When we met, I was borderline ready to end my life. His friendship changed that. He had gone out the night before and had a party to celebrate getting his life together and accomplishing a goal he had set for himself. When he got home, he picked up his pistol and ended his life. Story 26. Literally minutes ago. I am at the hospital after a bad fall, leaving my home last night to pick up my mentally ill son. He has been staying at a group home and started smoking pot, which can trigger a psychotic episode for him. He was clean for so long. I am currently in severe physical and emotional pain and wonder how much I have left. Story 27. Last time I cried in front of someone was when my best friend overdosed about 8 years ago. I cry while hidden from others, a few times a year, in the shower where I'm safe to show my emotions. Story 28. For some reason, my palate of taste has improved to the point where I get emotional and cry when I'm eating a freshly cooked burger from a gourmet restaurant. So, possibly brain damage and eating things is the last time I cried, which is often. Story 29. I watched a funny video and laughed so much I cried. As for emotional crying, when I was going through my worst time, I decided to defer crying until I was out of the mess. Once I was out of the mess, I had nothing to cry about. I look back at the awful days and nights, and they help me appreciate every moment of today. Story 30. I am emotional. Many things make me want to cry, but I never allow myself to because men do not cry and crying is weakness. Fast forward to now, I have developed a bunch of health issues because I never let myself cry or show emotion. Was it worth it? I do not know. Story 31. Yesterday or the day before. It's like the pressure release valve on the water heater. I cry when I get overwhelmed by emotion. It's been an emotional few weeks. Story 32. Election night or the night after. My son was 2 months old and I felt and still do feel like we as a society and a country failed him and every kid like him fantastically. It was overwhelming to feel such dread and hopelessness at a time when I should be feeling the great possibilities ahead of his life. I still do sometimes, but now I have to compartmentalize that, or I am going to go nuts with every news article that drowns my feed about Elon Musk or some other person. Story 33. Man in early 30s. Been crying a lot recently. Getting more comfortable letting it out. Cried today, actually. Just tired and overwhelmed by the world recently. Been a bit lonely too. Letting the emotions flow, though that has been really good growth for me. Story 34. I had a solid 10 years of not crying through my mid-teenage years into my mid-20s. Now I'm 30 and cry 2 to 3 times a year, mostly for movies that hit close to home or thinking about aspects of life I'd rather not talk about. Story 35. Yesterday I cried almost every day for at least a little bit, but I'm pretty in tune with my emotions. This time it was just from listening to music, Euclid by Sleep Token to be specific. I highly recommend the trilogy of albums that lead to it, but it still hits super hard without the rest of the context. Story 36. Last night. I feel like I'm mourning my dad, and he's still alive. But ever since his stroke, he's not the same. Every time I talk to him, he's just watching television or reading and won't even acknowledge me. It's gotten worse. Right now, right this second, I'm watching him sit in his chair and stare off into space. I feel like I lost my dad, and now I'm crying. Story 37. Honestly, probably tonight. I'm the only one of my brothers who cares for my parents with health problems. My younger brother said I don't do anything. To think he believes abandoning them and doing nothing for them is right and has the nerve to say I don't do anything. Story 38. When I replayed The Witcher 3 over Christmas for the 7th time, specifically when Geralt finds what he finds on the Isle of Mists, the floodgates open, man. The same goes for the ending of the main story. Story 39. I have been trying to work on being better with this myself because I got tired of bottling it in and stopping myself before it can happen. I almost cried today and kind of cried yesterday, both over Dungeons and Dragons show nerdiness. Story 40. A couple of hours ago, while driving back from work after trying for 12 hours to solve some problems on my day off to compensate for the delays, I ended up with zero output. I am having a hard time figuring things out easily because of my attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Story 41. When I had to put down my favorite chicken. She was the last of the original flock, always had such an inquisitive eye. We were on to the fourth generation, so we have had to do this a few times, but when she got ill and we tried everything for her, when we knew it was time, even though it was the right thing to do, it felt like the end of an era. Story 42. I think I cried when I got melancholic about some old stuff recently, but only briefly before collecting myself. I remember actually crying Sunday evening before work once or twice because I felt overwhelmed. Story 43. When I realized that for the majority of Americans who bothered to get off their fat asses and vote, honor, integrity, and decency just aren't that important. Story 44. I can shed tears at almost any time for I strain, but emotionally cry? Maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, but more or less not really about my emotions, and without really appraising my daily experience to locate even subdued tears, probably 11 months before that for my emotions and 4 or 5 before that for others again. I can also counterbalance the chain of thought and have that emotional acuity aspect completely internalized, but I figure it is perhaps dangerous with modern pollutant loads and biological accumulation form factors, so unless it would bother anyone around me, I try to at least give them a chance to be released as a natural expression instead of some mind state deformity to be hidden and suppressed. Marijuana is good for such circumstances because it can let you ease back to the reality of those around you, with the act being almost funny in a certain light.